The rain came down in sheets, slicing through the night like a punishment, as though the city itself had turned on him. Alexander Donovan pulled the collar of his once expensive coat tighter, but it did little to keep out the cold. The fabric was frayed at the cuffs, the left pocket torn open like an old wound, and his shoes Italian leather, once polished, daily squished with every step, as dirty water seeped through cracked seams. 6 months ago, none of this would have touched him. 6 months ago, he was chauffeured through Manhattan's glistening streets in a Bentley, sipping $100 scotch, watching the world through tinted windows as though it were his kingdom. Now, those windows were for other people, people who still mattered. He moved with the hollow rhythm of a man who had nowhere to go. The skyscrapers that once seemed like symbols of triumph now loomed over him, indifferent giants watching him shrink. Every glowing window reminded him of offices and boardrooms he no longer had the right to enter. His name had been scrubbed from buildings, erased from partnerships, laughed out of circles that once begged for his attention. Alex Donovan, the Wall Street golden boy, had burned out faster than anyone thought possible. His fall hadn't been a slow unraveling. It had been a plunge, the kind that leaves your stomach permanently twisted. Heiress and Blackwell, the investment firm everyone swore was unshakable, had collapsed with a thunderclap. Alex had poured everything into it, convinced. He knew better than the cautious voices warning him. Arrogance had been his shadow, whispering that he could outsmart the storm. But storms don't bargain, and when the company crumbled, it dragged him under. Millions gone. His net worth of $70 million reduced to a bank account that couldn't cover next month's rent. The tabloids called it poetic justice, his so-called. Friends called it unfortunate, but necessary to cut ties. A cab sped close to the curb, splashing a wave of filthy water across his legs. He didn't even flinch. The cold sting of it barely registered anymore. Misery had dulled everything. He was invisible now, just another ruined man shuffling through Manhattan's veins. Maybe he deserved it. Maybe this was how the universe, even the scales. He was halfway past the glowing weight of a boutique when he heard it. A sound so faint it almost vanished beneath the rain. A sob, small, broken, and quickly stifled as though afraid to exist. Alex froze. Instinct told him to keep walking. It wasn't his problem. He had enough of his own, but something, a flicker of humanity not yet drowned by bitterness, pulled him toward the narrow alley, wedged between the boutique and a restaurant that smelled of butter and wine. He could no longer afford Dot in the shadows. Curled against a wall beneath a sagging cardboard box sat a child. She couldn't have been more than 8, her hair tangled and plastered to her pale face. Her clothes, a t-shirt and jeans, were soaked through, clinging to thin limbs, trembling from the cold. She hugged her knees tightly, as if trying to vanish. Inside herself, "Hey," Alex said softly, stepping into the darkness. His voice sounded strange, as if it belonged to a man he used to be. "Are you okay?" Her head snapped up. The first thing he saw were her eyes, startling, bright green, burning with a weariness that no child should know. She glared at him, unflinching, the sob swallowed back as though ashamed of it. "Go away," she said, her voice steadier than her shivering body. Alex crouched down, careful not to get too close. He had seen that kind of gaze before, the sharp edge of pride that rejects pity. He carried enough of it himself. It's freezing. Everyone needs help sometimes. Not from strangers, she shot back, her eyes narrowing. He gave a small, weary smile. "I'm Alex. Now, I'm not a stranger anymore." Her lips didn't even twitch. "That's not how it works." He nodded slowly, respecting her defiance. Smart girl, smarter than most adults he'd known. "Do you have somewhere to go? Parents? Someone I can call?" For a heartbeat, something flickered across her face, pain. Raw and unguarded, but it vanished almost as quickly as it came. She shook her head. "No, nobody." Alex should have stood up, walked away, called someone whose job it was to deal with children like her. But instead, he stayed crouched in the rain, staring into those impossible green eyes. Eyes that dared him to see her, not as a problem or a burden, but as a person. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated, hugging her knees tighter. When she finally answered, it was barely above a whisper. "Lily." The name trembled in the air between them, simple, fragile, and yet delivered with the strength of someone who refused to disappear. And in that instant, Alex Donovan, the bankrupt millionaire who thought nothing mattered anymore, felt a spark of something stir within him. Not redemption, not yet, but the first crack in the wall he had built around himself. He didn't know it, but this girl, this Lily, was about to change everything. The rain had stopped by morning, but Manhattan still dripped as if the city itself was wringing out its sorrow. Alex woke on the edge of his bed, staring at the water stains on the ceiling. The silence of his apartment broken only by the hum of a tired refrigerator. For a long moment, he wondered if the girl in the alley had been some cruel dream, conjured by loneliness and regret. But then he smelled something faint and sweet, the lingering aroma of hot chocolate. He remembered. She was real. Padding into the living room, he found her exactly where he had left her, curled on the couch beneath a blanket too big for her small frame. Her dark hair fanned out across the cushion, damp but cleaner than before. A ghost of steam rising from the towel he had given her. She wasn't asleep. Her eyes were open. Those fierce green eyes, watching him as though she had never closed them at all. "You stayed," Alex said quietly, surprised at the relief in his own voice. "You promised one night," Lily replied, sitting up with careful dignity. As though reminding both of them that this was temporary, he moved to the kitchen, fumbling through his barren cabinets. 2 slices of bread, a jar with just enough peanut butter scraped from the sides, and half a carton of milk. That was breakfast. His former life had been filled with brunches at 5-star hotels, but now he set the plate in front of her like it was a feast. She studied it with the suspicion of someone who had learned not to trust gifts. Only after a pause did she pick up the sandwich, sniff it, and take a cautious bite. "You're not hungry?" she asked, noticing he hadn't taken any for himself. "I already ate," Alex lied, sipping the milk instead. He couldn't remember the last time he'd eaten more than scraps. The silence stretched between them until she asked, almost accusingly, "Why are you helping me?" The question was a knife. He didn't know how to answer. "Not really." He ran a hand through his hair and said, "Because nobody helped me when I lost everything. I know what it feels like to be invisible." At the mention of loss, something flickered across her face again. Her hand slipped beneath her shirt, fingers curling around the chain at her neck. The gesture was quick, almost instinctive, but Alex noticed. She carried something there, something important. Before he could ask, she stiffened, her eyes darting to the window. He followed her gaze and saw nothing, just rain-slicked streets, taxis, and pedestrians hurrying to work, but her body had gone. Rigid. "There's a man," she whispered, voice trembling despite her steel, across the street. "He's been watching since before dawn." Alex stepped closer to the glass. A tall figure in a dark coat leaned against a black sedan, head lowered as if scanning his phone. To anyone else, he was just another commuter waiting out the morning rush. But Alex saw the way Lily's hands shook. Whoever he was, she knew him. "Do you know him?" Alex asked. She nodded slowly. "He works for my uncle." The word uncle fell heavy. Soaked with dread, Alex turned toward her, about to press for more, but her eyes flashed a warning. "Don't call anyone. Don't tell anyone I'm here. If they take me back." She broke off, her lip trembling for the first time. "I won't come back out." Alex felt his chest tighten. This was no ordinary runaway. There was a story here, tangled and dark. A story bigger than the rain and the hunger and his ruined life. And he had just stepped into it. A knock at the door made them both jump. 3 sharp raps, precise and deliberate. Alex's heart pounded as he crept toward the peephole. Standing there was a woman in a gray coat, her hair pulled back in a professional bun. Meredith Chen, an old friend from college, now a caseworker with the city's child welfare department. She was the last person he had expected or wanted to see Alex. Meredith's voice carried through the door. "I need to talk to you." Lily's eyes widened, her small hands curling into fists. She shook her head violently, mouthing the words, "Don't open it." The pounding started again, louder this time. "Alex, I know you're in there. Someone reported a child in your apartment." He froze, torn between his past and his present. On one side of the door was law, procedure, safety. On the other side, a child who trusted him enough to stay the night, but not enough to stay if he betrayed her. "Alex," Meredith called once more. "If you don't open the door, I'll have to come back with the police." He turned back to Lily. Her eyes were locked on him, defiant and terrified all at once. Her hand clenched so tightly around the hidden pendant that her knuckles went white. "You promised," she whispered. The words echoed in him like a vow. And in that moment, Alex Donovan realized his choice wasn't about wealth, pride, or redemption anymore. It was about whether he would keep walking through the rain alone or stand, finally, for someone else. He stepped toward the door, every nerve alive with dread, and behind him, Lily whispered something so soft he almost didn't hear. A name, a real name, Victoria. The sound of it was like a key turning in a lock, opening a story that neither of them could yet see the end of. The air in Alex's apartment grew heavier with each second, as though the walls themselves knew a storm was brewing. Meredith's voice still lingered behind the door, but Lily's whisper Victoria had cut deeper than any threat of police or procedure. She sat rigid on the couch, clutching her knees, her hair hanging damp around her pale face. Her eyes, those unearthly green eyes, were locked on him, daring him to betray her, daring him to choose. He opened the door only a crack. Meredith's face appeared in the sliver of light, sharp and cautious. "Alex, what's going on? Who is the child?" Alex slipped into the hall, pulling the door closed behind him. "It's not what you think." Meredith's gaze was piercing, the way it had been back in college when she challenged professors. "Then tell me, because neighbors say they saw a girl last night." And Alex, she looked terrified. He lowered his voice. "She was on the street in the rain, alone. I couldn't just leave her there." "That's not how this works," Meredith said, folding her arms. "You can't take in a child like a stray dog. There are laws, procedures. If she needs protection, she needs the system. The system," Alex muttered bitterly, "is what she's running from." Behind the door, a floorboard creaked. Lily was listening, every word feeding her fear. Meredith studied him, her features softening for a moment. "Alex, you've already lost so much. Don't get tangled in something you can't handle." But Alex's mind was racing, replaying Lily's scream from the night before. "No, Uncle Richard, please don't hurt them." The haunted edge in her voice wasn't something a child invented. It was lived, real. He shut the door gently, leaving Meredith standing outside, and turned back into the dim apartment. Lily was gone. Lily, his chest constricted, panic surged. Then he spotted her, a small figure crouched by the window, her face pale and her eyes fixed on the street below. "He's still there," she whispered. Alex followed her gaze. The man by the black sedan hadn't moved. He stood in the drizzle, dark coat buttoned to the throat, his head tilted just slightly toward their building. "Who is he?" Alex asked. Her answer was quiet, clipped, but laced with terror. "My uncle's shadow. He doesn't leave loose ends." Alex swallowed hard. "Your uncle, Richard?" Her lips pressed tight. For a moment he thought she wouldn't answer, but then she crawled toward her backpack, dragging it across the floor. From the depths, she pulled out a wrinkled sheet of newspaper, folded and refolded so many times it was falling apart at the seams. She thrust it at him. "This is why I can't go back." The headline punched him in the gut. Blackwood heiress, still missing after 3 months. Beneath it, a photograph clean and polished. A younger version of Lily in an expensive dress, standing beside a stern man with silver hair and cold eyes. The caption, "Richard Blackwood, interim CEO of Blackwood Industries, with his niece, Victoria Blackwood." The name rang like a bell through Alex's mind. He had known the Blackwoods at least by reputation, old money, American royalty, power. Threaded through politics and industry, Blackwood Industries was a fortress worth billions. And Richard Blackwood, Alex had heard whispers of him during the height of his own career. Ruthless, untouchable. He looked down at the girl before him. The girl who had eaten his stale peanut butter sandwich, who had whispered her name like a confession in the dark. She wasn't just Lily. She was Victoria Blackwood, the missing heir. Victoria. He said aloud. The name felt heavy in his mouth. She flinched. "Don't call me that." "Why not?" "Because Victoria is the girl they want to control. Victoria is the girl he'll kill to stay in power. I'm Lily now. Just Lily." Her hand rose again to the chain at her neck. She pulled it out this time, and Alex saw the pendant clearly. For the first time, a silver key, ornate, with an emblem etched into the metal. Not a trinket from a street vendor. Something older, something meant to unlock secrets. "My mother gave me this the night before she died," Lily whispered. Her voice cracked on the word mother. "She said if anything happened, this would keep me safe. But he wants it. He'll do anything to get it back." Alex crouched, the weight of it all pressing down on him. "Your uncle killed them, didn't he?" Her eyes filled, but did not spill over. "The boat didn't sink by accident. I heard him that night. He said, after tomorrow, everything changes. no loose ends. And the next day, my parents were dead. The room seemed to shrink, the air to thin to breathe. Alex felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain outside. Before he could speak, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The girl is worth more than money. Walk away if you value your life. His pulse hammered. He looked back at the window. The man in the dark coat was still there, waiting. Alex closed the blinds with a sharp snap. His heart told him one thing clearly. He was in over his head. But then Lily's small hand slipped into his. They'll come for me, she whispered. They always do. And Alex, who had already lost everything that wants to find him, realized he had just found the one thing worth fighting for. The storm had passed, but Manhattan didn't feel calmer. It felt like a beast holding its breath, waiting to pounce. Alex hadn't slept. Every creak in the apartment, every passing car below set his nerves on fire. The blinds stayed drawn. The lights dimmed, but the weight of unseen eyes pressed in from the street. Somewhere out there, the man in the black coat was still waiting, watching. At dawn, Lily sat at the kitchen counter, her damp hair combed back, wearing one of Alex's oversized t-shirts that nearly swallowed her frame. She ate cereal in small, deliberate bites, though her gaze never left the chain around her neck. That silver key gleamed faintly whenever her fingers brushed against it, as if it carried its own pulse. Alex watched her, coffee cooling in his hands. He couldn't shake the feeling that the key was more than just jewelry. It was a magnet, pulling danger toward her, pulling him into a story too big for either of them. Finally, he asked, "What does it open, Lily?" Her spoon clinked against the bowl. Not Lily, Victoria. At least for this. Her eyes lifted, steady, ancient in their wisdom. "It opens a box, a safe deposit box my mother told me about. She said if anything happened to her, I should trust only the key. She said everything I'd need to survive would be inside." Alex set his cup down. "Which bank?" "First Federal on Madison," she whispered, as though the walls might be listening. "My father hated them, said they were vultures, but my mother insisted, said it was the one place he couldn't touch." You mean Richard?" Victoria nodded, her lips tightening into a hard line. "He has the police, judges, lawyers, everyone, but not the bank. Not yet." Alex leaned back, rubbing at his temples. A bankrupt ex-millionaire sneaking into a marble fortress of finance, with a child heiress hunted by her billionaire uncle. Insanity. Yet when he looked into her eyes, he saw no fear, only determination. She had already chosen. By late morning, he dug out his last good suit, pressed and hanging like a relic from a forgotten life. It felt strange pulling it on, as though he were pretending to be the man he used to be. But if they were going to walk into a bank tied to one of the wealthiest families in the country, appearances mattered. Victoria, wearing a simple coat and dress he'd hastily bought from a corner shop, looked every bit the child of power despite her size. Posture straight, chin lifted, she carried herself like someone who belonged in marble hallways. The bank loomed before them, polished stone and glass, its golden letters glinting above the entrance like a warning. Inside, men and women in tailored suits glided across marble floors, their voices hushed, their steps echoing beneath the high ceiling. Alex's throat tightened. This was his old world. Yet now he felt like an intruder. At the counter, a polished manager approached. "Good morning, sir. How may I assist you?" Alex forced confidence into his tone. "I'd like to access my safe deposit box. My niece is accompanying me." He motioned toward Victoria, who slipped the silver key from beneath her collar. The manager's eyes landed on the key, and for the first time, his smooth mask faltered. "That belongs to the Blackwood estate." Victoria stepped forward, her voice clear, steady, carrying authority that sent a ripple through the air. "I am Victoria Blackwood. This key was given to me by my mother before her death. I am here to claim what is rightfully mine." The manager blinked, visibly unsettled. "Miss, I would need to verify, then call my uncle." Victoria interrupted sharply. "Tell him I'm here. See how quickly he arrives." The man paled. After a beat of silence, he bowed slightly. "That won't be necessary. Please, follow me." Alex shot her a glance, half admiring, half horrified. She had played her hand with terrifying precision. They were led into a quiet, private room lined with small metal drawers. The manager produced a long box and set it on the table. With trembling hands, Victoria slid the key into the lock. The click echoed like a gunshot in the stillness. Inside lay 3 objects: a leather-bound letter, a small black recording device, and a USB drive. Victoria's hand shook as she picked up the letter. My mother's handwriting, she breathed. She unfolded the paper and began to read in silence, her lips moving slightly. Alex gave her privacy, his eyes drawn to the USB drive. He pulled out his phone and connected it, the screen filled with folders, financial records, photographs, dates, transfers. His breath caught as he scrolled. Richard Blackwood's empire was rotten from the inside. Evidence of embezzlement, illegal trades, offshore accounts. Then a video file caught his eye, labeled simply, insurance. He pressed play. A woman appeared on the screen, elegant, striking her dark hair pinned neatly, her green eyes unmistakably Victoria's. If you are watching this, Richard has made his move, she said, voice steady, but urgent. The documents on this drive prove his betrayal. He has been embezzling for years. Charles and I confronted him last night. Tomorrow we meet with the board. If anything happens to us, she faltered, her voice trembling. Victoria, trust the key. Trust only those who see you for who you are, not what you are worth. We love you. The video ended. Alex's hands shook as he shut the phone off. Across the table, Victoria sat frozen, the letter clutched to her chest, tears streaking silently down her face. They killed them, she whispered. He killed them. Alex reached out, covering her small hand with his own. Then this is what we used to stop him. Before she could answer, his phone buzzed violently. A text from an unknown number. We know you have her. We know you have the key. Noon. Blackwood Tower rooftop. Bring them or someone dies. Alex's blood turned cold. The walls of the marble fortress felt suddenly like a trap. He glanced toward the door, already imagining Richard's men moving through the city like wolves, closing in. Victoria's hand tightened around the recording device. Her voice was barely more than a whisper, but it was filled with steel. Then we fight. The city felt different that day, like every honking horn, every rushing crowd, every flickering neon light carried a secret only Alex and Victoria knew. The silver key, the letter, the recording device. Truth itself lay hidden in Victoria's backpack as they hurried down a side street, keeping their heads low. Alex's phone burned in his pocket with the message that still rang in his skull. Noon. Blackwood Tower rooftop. Bring them or someone dies. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to vanish with the girl before Richard's reach closed like a noose. But Richard Blackwood didn't just control money. He controlled people, judges, police, men in dark coats who watched buildings all night. There was no vanishing. Not here. Not now. As they ducked into a cafe to catch their breath, Alex tried to steady his hands around a cup of bitter coffee. Across from him, Victoria sat straight-backed, her small fingers wrapped tightly around the strap of her backpack. Her eyes scanned every corner of the room, never resting, never softening. You're just a kid, Alex muttered, watching her with a pang that felt heavier than guilt. You shouldn't have to live like this. Her green eyes snapped to him, sharp as glass. Neither should you, but here we are. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again, because she was right. The cafe door swung open, and the air shifted. A tall man in a charcoal coat entered, scanning the room with deliberate ease. Alex's heart lurched for one of Richard's men. It had to be, but when the man's gaze locked on him, it wasn't malice Alex saw. It was recognition. Alex, the man called softly. Alex blinked. He knew that voice. Carter Wilson, his former business partner. The man he hadn't seen since the day Heiress and Blackwell collapsed. Carter slid into their booth without asking, his cologne to strong, his smile to wide. Well, word on the street is, you've been keeping interesting company. His eyes flicked to Victoria, lingering along. Alex stiffened. Leave her out of this. Carter chuckled, tapping his fingers on the table. Can't, my friend. Not when Richard's offering $1 million bounty for information about his missing niece. His voice dropped lower. And I've got debts, Alex. Big ones. $1 million would set me free. Victoria's hand slipped beneath the table, clutching Alex's coat. Her eyes never left Carter's face. What does he want with her? Alex asked, though he already knew. Carter leaned in, his smile turning razor thin. She's not just some runaway. When she turns 21, she inherits controlling interest in Blackwood Industries. $30 billion, give or take, until then. Richard runs the show, but if she's gone, he snapped his fingers. It's his forever. Alex's stomach twisted. Carter wasn't just here for small talk. He was here to sell them out. I'll give you a friendly warning, Carter said, pushing away from the table. Don't play hero. You're out of your league. He straightened his coat. Noon, rooftop. Don't be late. As Carter walked out, Alex's phone buzzed again. This time, not a text. A call. A known number. He answered with a shaky hand. Mr. Donovan, came the smooth, cultured voice he had only ever heard in news broadcasts. Richard Blackwood. Alex's blood ran cold. Your loyalty is impressive, Richard continued, but misguided. That child, my niece, belongs with her family. Bring her to me at noon, with everything her mother left behind. And Miss Jessica Hayes will be returned unharmed. Alex froze. Jessica. His ex-fiancée. His Jessica. I see I have your attention, Richard purred. She's currently a guest of mine. I imagine she'd very much like to leave in one piece. You touch her. Please, Alex. Spare me the dramatics. Noon. Blackwood Tower rooftop. Come alone. Bring the girl. Bring the evidence, or Jessica's blood will be on your conscience. The line went dead. Alex sat there, numb. The phone pressed to his ear long after the call ended. Across from him, Victoria watched, her expression unreadable. They took Jessica, he whispered. Victoria's jaw tightened, her small shoulders squaring with a resolve that seemed big for her frame. Then we fight smarter. What do you mean? She leaned forward, her voice low but fierce. He thinks he has all the pieces. He doesn't. We split the evidence. We create copies. We bluff. If we hand him everything, he wins. If we keep the truth alive somewhere he can't reach, we win. Alex shook his head. He's dangerous. Victoria. He's already killed your parents. And if we run, he'll kill more. She snapped, her eyes blazing. Don't you get it? This isn't about money anymore. Those files, those deals my uncle is making, they're not just business. He's selling defense systems to people who hate this country. If we don't stop him, innocent people will die. The cafe around them faded into silence. Alex stared at her, this small girl with tangled hair and a voice that carried the weight of nations. He realized she wasn't just a frightened child. She was a survivor, a fighter, and maybe the only person standing between Richard Blackwood and absolute power. His phone buzzed once more. A final text from an unknown number. Tick-tock. Donovan. Noon comes fast. Alex met Victoria's gaze, his pulse thundering in his ears. Then we'd better be ready. She pulled the silver key from her shirt and laid it on the table between them. Its cold gleam caught the light, reflecting both there. Faces this, she whispered, isn't just a key. It's a weapon, and we're going to use it. The storm clouds had returned by the time Alex and Victoria reached the shadow of Blackwood Tower, Manhattan's glass and steel fortress. The skyscraper stretched so high into the clouds it seemed to vanish, as if daring mortals to challenge the empire built inside its walls. The streets below buzzed with traffic and tourists, but Alex felt only the weight of the silver key burning like fire in his pocket, and the promise of blood in Richard Blackwood's voice. Noon. Rooftop. Jessica's life for the evidence. Every step toward the revolving doors felt like a step into a grave. Victoria walked beside him, her coat pulled tight, her chin lifted with quiet defiance. To the world, she was just a girl clutching her guardian's hand, but Alex could feel the tension in her grip, the steel running through her small frame. She was ready for this, maybe more ready than he was. Inside the marble lobby, everything gleamed, polished floors, gold-veined pillars, the hum of wealth and power in the air. Security cameras swiveled like silent sentinels. Alex half expected alarms to blare the moment they stepped in. Richard's men pouring out of the walls, but instead, the receptionist simply smiled, as though their arrival had been anticipated. Mr. Donovan, she said smoothly, Mr. Blackwood is expecting you, executive elevator, top floor. Alex's blood chilled. Richard hadn't even tried to hide his awareness. The ride-up was silent except for the low hum of the elevator. The higher they rose, the heavier the air became. As though gravity itself thickened inside Blackwood Tower, Victoria didn't fidget, didn't blink. She stood still, staring at the numbers glowing above the doors, each one a countdown to whatever. Waited at the top. When the elevator chimed, they stepped into a hushed corridor. Plush carpet swallowed their footsteps. The walls were lined with dark wood. Oil paintings of Blackwood ancestors glaring down as though guarding their legacy. At the far end, double glass doors opened to the rooftop. Jessica was there. Her wrists were bound, her face pale, her hair disheveled. Two men in suits flanked her, their eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses, and between them, standing with the poise of a man who believed the world itself bent to his will, was Richard Blackwood. He looked exactly like the photographs distinguished. Silver hair, expensive suit cut to perfection, the kind of presence that commanded boardrooms. But up close, Alex could see the cracks, the cold, hollow eyes, the curl of disdain in every movement. Alexander Donovan, Richard drawled, his voice carrying easily over the wind that whipped across the rooftop. The fallen prince of Wall Street, I have to admire your audacity, rescuing strays, meddling in affairs you cannot comprehend. His gaze shifted to Victoria, and for the first time, his mask cracked, a flicker of anger, a flicker of fear. My dear niece, he said softly, you've caused me a great deal of trouble. Victoria didn't flinch. You killed them, she said, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. You killed my parents. Richard's smile never wavered. Business is sacrifice, child. You'll understand that one day. Alex stepped forward, pulling the us from his pocket. You mean treason, embezzlement, murder. I've seen the files. So has she. It's over. Richard's eyes narrowed, the cold gleam of a predator. He extended his hand. The drive, the recording, the key. Now, Alex shook his head. Jessica first. Richard's smile vanished. He nodded slightly, and one of the men released Jessica, shoving her forward. She stumbled, nearly collapsing before Alex caught her arm. Relief surged through him, but it was fleeting. The other man drew a gun, pressing it against Jessica's temple. Don't test me, Richard snapped. You are standing on the roof of my kingdom. One wrong move, and both of you die before you blink. The wind howled, the city sprawling endless below them. Alex's pulse hammered. They were cornered, outnumbered. Then Victoria stepped forward. She pulled the recording device from her pocket and pressed play. Richard's voice filled the air, cold and damning. Charles and Eleanor had become liabilities. The yacht's maintenance was overlooked as instructed. After tomorrow, everything changes. No loose ends. Victoria's trust fund will be under my control. The words echoed against the skyscrapers, the sound impossible to ignore. Richard's face blanched, fury and panic warring in his eyes. That recording is a forgery, he hissed. No one will believe it. They don't have to believe it, Alex said, his own voice steady now. They just have to hear it. The FBI already has copies. Richard's hand twitched. He grabbed the gun from his guard and leveled it at Alex. You think you've won? I built this empire. I buried your parents, girl, and I'll bury you too. The barrel of the gun gleamed, aimed squarely at Alex's chest. In that heartbeat, time fractured. The roar of the city fell silent. Alex saw everything. Jessica's wide eyes, the guards frozen in uncertainty, Richard's finger tightening on the trigger. He knew he couldn't move fast enough, but Victoria did. She lunged toward the desk at the rooftop's edge, seizing a heavy glass award from its stand. With a cry that was more rage than fear, she swung it with all her strength. The award cracked against Richard's temple. The gun fired, the bullet grazing Alex's shoulder in a burst of fire and pain. Richard staggered, his eyes wide with shock, before collapsing to the ground, unconscious. Silence crashed over the rooftop, broken only by Alex's ragged breaths. He clutched his bleeding shoulder, staring at the girl beside him, Victoria's. Chest heaved, her small hands trembling around the bloodied award, but her eyes burned with unshakable fire. Stay down, she told Richard's lifeless form, her voice steady, cold, victorious, and in that moment, Alex realized she wasn't just a child. She was a Blackwood, and she had just saved them all. Behind them, sirens wailed, drawing closer. Helicopters circled above. The FBI had arrived. And for the first time since he lost everything, Alex believed that maybe, just maybe, he had finally found the one thing worth losing everything for. The wind still whipped across the rooftop when the glass doors burst open, and a flood of dark suits stormed in. But these weren't Richard's men, these were federal agents. Their jackets marked with bold yellow letters, weapons drawn, and voices sharp. FBI. Drop your weapon. Richard lay stunned and bleeding on the ground, the gun clattering uselessly from his hand. The two guards raised theirs reluctantly, the cold bite of handcuffs closing around their wrists seconds later. In the chaos, paramedics rushed to Alex, pressing gauze to the bullet graze on his shoulder. But his eyes weren't on them. His eyes were on Victoria. She stood perfectly still, the glass award slipping from her trembling hands. Her green eyes locked on her uncle as the agents dragged him upright. For the first time, Richard Blackwood looked smaller, his tailored suit askew, his silver hair disheveled, his arrogance shattered by the weight of evidence and the eyes of men he couldn't buy. "You'll regret this," Richard hissed, his words slurred but venomous as he struggled against his captors. "You think this ends me? I am Blackwood Industries. I am untouchable." But Victoria stepped forward, chin lifted, her voice steady in a way that silenced even the agents. "No, you're just a man who killed his own brother, and men like you always fall." The rooftop went silent, save for the whirring helicopter blades overhead. And in that silence, Richard's face twisted not in triumph, but in something Alex had never imagined he'd see in the man: fear. The days that followed moved like a whirlwind. Richard Blackwood was booked, charged, and paraded through the media in handcuffs. His carefully crafted empire began to unravel overnight. Shareholders fleeing, board members scrambling to distance themselves from his crimes. The recording Victoria had carried in her pocket like a lifeline played across networks. The damning evidence impossible to ignore. But amidst the chaos, the question remained: what would happen to her now? Victoria spent those first nights in a safe house under FBI protection. Alex visited when he could, his shoulder bound tight, the pain dulled by medication, but not gone. Every time he saw her, she seemed both stronger and stronger in the way she answered questions with clear-eyed composure, smaller in the way she curled into the corner of the couch once the agents left, hugging her knees the way he'd found her that first night. One evening, Special Agent Reynolds sat across from Alex in a sterile conference room. She slid a file toward him, her eyes serious. Her parents will included an unusual clause: in the event of their death, and if Richard was unfit, guardianship of Victoria would be left to someone who demonstrated moral character, someone who put her well-being above wealth or ambition. Alex frowned, heart pounding, and Reynolds folded her hands. "She asked for you." The words struck him harder than any bullet could. "Me. I am not qualified. I've lost everything. I can't even pay next month's rent." "That's exactly why," Reynolds said softly, "because when you had nothing, you gave her everything." The hearing was brief but intense. Lawyers in tailored suits argued guardianship, while Alex sat awkwardly in his scuffed shoes, feeling like an imposter among titans of industry. But when the judge asked Victoria directly where she wished to live, she didn't hesitate. "With Alex," she said, her voice firm, her small hands folded in her lap. "Because he saw me when no one else did." The gavel came down. Guardianship granted. Months later, the story was still everywhere, tabloids splashing headlines like "Broke Millionaire Saves Heiress," while financial journals speculated on what would happen to Blackwood Industries under the stewardship of a 9-year-old heir. Alex ignored them all. He had bigger battles at home, teaching Victoria Lily, as she now wanted to be called, that bedtime didn't mean nightmares, that peanut butter sandwiches could still taste safe, that not everyone in the world wanted something from her, but Lily gave as much as she received. She pulled Alex out of his own wreckage, teaching him that worth wasn't measured in bank accounts or luxury cars. Sometimes it was measured in laughter at a kitchen table, or in the quiet way a child leaned against you on a couch. Finally, at peace, one evening, as the city lights glittered through their townhouse window, Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, the silver key resting in her palm. "I've been thinking," she said. "Dangerous habit," Alex teased gently. She smiled faintly. "I don't want to keep the name Blackwood, not after everything he did. I want something new, something that feels like home." Alex's throat tightened. "And what name is that?" She looked up, eyes bright, voice steady. "Donovan, Lily Donovan." For a long moment, Alex couldn't speak. The man who had once believed himself worthless now realized he had been chosen not by money, not by power, but by the one person who mattered most. "They all laughed at you, didn't they?" Lily said softly, almost playfully, "when you took me in, when they thought you were just a broke fool." "Yeah," Alex admitted, his smile bittersweet. Her eyes sparkled, her hand slipping into his. "They're not laughing now. Outside, Manhattan pulsed with its endless rhythm, neon lights, endless traffic, fortunes rising and falling with every heartbeat. But inside, in that quiet living room, a fallen millionaire and a once-lost heir sat together, not as a story for the papers, not as headlines for the world, but as something rarer than any empire could buy. Family. And for the first time in years, Alex Donovan felt rich again.